Racist cop tries to arrest black woman. Her diplomatic protection saves the day. In this eye-opening video, we delve into a shocking encounter between a racist cop and a black woman, highlighting the underlying issues of racial profiling. The incident unfolds as the officer attempts to arrest the woman without any justifiable cause, showcasing a blatant misuse of power and authority. This video serves as a powerful reminder of the racial injustices that continue to plague our society. If you are enthusiastic about this narrative, please inform us. If you appreciated the video, press 1. If not, select 0. Your feedback genuinely motivates me to collect additional uplifting and significant narratives.
Want to miss. Annika Thompson, a senior agent of the National Security Agency, NSA, is renowned for her expertise in cybersecurity and counterterrorism. With years of experience and an impressive track record, she's entrusted with the most sensitive cases that have direct implications for national security. One quiet Wednesday morning, Annika was driving an unmarked SUV borrowed from a colleague. The vehicle, deliberately chosen for its nondescript appearance, helped conceal her identity. Annika was dressed casually in jeans and a sporty jacket, blending seamlessly into the tranquil suburban landscape. She was on her way to an emergency meeting at a highly secure location. This meeting was crucial, focusing on a case that posed a severe threat to the nation's cybersecurity infrastructure. As she drove, her mind was occupied with the intricate details of the case, from intelligence on the target to strategies for defense. With years of specialized training and hands-on experience, Annika maintained her calm and focus, even during the most critical missions. Morning sunlight streamed through the car's windows, but its warmth did little to ease the tension in Annika's mind. She habitually checked her rearview mirror, a reflex honed through years of fieldwork. Deep down, however, Annika sensed a vague unease. She couldn't pinpoint its source, just an instinct, a nagging feeling that something was amiss. She reassured herself that it was probably just the natural vigilance of a seasoned agent, always attuned to danger. The SUV approached an intersection, and as she stopped at a red light, Annika glanced across the street. Parked at the curb was a police patrol car with 2 officers chatting inside. They weren't a concern for her, yet her sense of unease suddenly heightened. Shaking off the thought, she reminded herself that it was just another ordinary workday, or so she hoped. What happened next would completely upend this peaceful morning, thrusting Annika into a situation even she couldn't foresee. When the light turned green, Annika gently pressed the gas pedal to continue her journey. However, she didn't realize that her SUV had caught the attention of the patrol car by the roadside. Inside, 2 local police officers, Martin Green and Lucas Brown, were methodically observing each vehicle. But Martin's gaze lingered longer on Annika's black SUV. Martin, in his 40s, had sharp yet occasionally cold eyes. Once a dedicated officer, years of working in a high-crime area, and the pressures from superiors had turned him into someone who mistrusted anything that didn't fit the norm. To Martin, Annika's upscale and unidentifiable SUV looked out of place in this peaceful suburb. Lucas, his younger and less experienced partner, noticed Martin's focus but stayed silent. Lucas was well acquainted with Martin's habit of relying on instinct over evidence and had grown accustomed to letting his veteran partner take the lead. "That car, it doesn't belong here," Martin muttered, his eyes fixed on the license plate. "Something's off." Lucas glanced out the window but saw nothing unusual. "It's just an SUV, Martin. Probably someone passing through," he said softly, not keen on arguing. "No," Martin replied firmly, quickly typing the license plate into the onboard computer. The system indicated that the car wasn't registered under the current driver's name, fueling his suspicion. That's the first sign, Martin said with a faint smile. The vehicle isn't registered to the driver. We need to check this out. Lucas hesitated but said nothing when Martin activated the lights and siren. The two officers began tailing Annika's SUV. Meanwhile, Annika was focused on her plans for the upcoming meeting when the sound of a police siren broke her concentration. Glancing in the rearview mirror, she saw the flashing red and blue lights. The uneasy feeling from earlier surged back, stronger this time. Annika quickly assessed the situation. There were no apparent traffic violations, and while the vehicle wasn't registered in her name, it belonged to the National Security Agency. Still, she understood that this encounter could escalate. She signaled and slowly pulled over to the side of the road, maintaining absolute composure. Resting her hands on the steering wheel, she exhaled quietly, reminding herself that everything would be fine if handled correctly. Yet, the cold, wary look on Martin's face as he stepped out of the patrol car, his hand near his holstered weapon, made it clear this would not be a routine conversation. Martin approached Annika's window with an authoritative and skeptical demeanor. Lucas followed behind, keeping a measured distance and glancing at Martin as if evaluating whether his partner might be overreacting. "Good morning, ma'am," Martin began, his tone steady but sharp. "Do you know why we pulled you over?" Annika looked up, her expression calm. "I'm not sure, officer. Did I commit a violation?" Martin silently studied her face, searching for any sign of deception. Her confident but unassuming demeanor only deepened his suspicion. "This vehicle isn't registered under your name," he said coldly. "Can you explain why?" Annika knew she had to tread carefully. She couldn't reveal too much about her mission, but also needed to avoid escalating the situation. "This vehicle belongs to a colleague," she replied clearly. "I borrowed it for work today." To Martin, this explanation did little to quell his doubts. "Work? What kind of work, ma'am?" he asked, his tone laced with sarcasm. "People don't drive cars like this through a neighborhood like this without a reason." Lucas felt uneasy with Martin's approach, but remained silent, merely observing. Annika took a deep breath, maintaining her composure. "I'm a federal agent," she said, her tone professional. "If necessary, I can provide identification." Martin raised an eyebrow, a skeptical smirk forming on his lips. "A federal agent?" he repeated, his voice tinged with disbelief. "Let me see your ID, right now." Lucas took a cautious step back, sensing the tension escalating. Internally, he began to question whether Martin's suspicions were justified. But Martin had already taken things a step further, and the situation was now difficult to de-escalate. Annika knew she had to handle this delicately, as any wrong move could lead to an unwanted outcome. Martin squinted as he stared at Annika, watching her every move as she opened the glove compartment beside the driver's seat. Her movements were deliberate and unhurried, leaving no reason for Martin to suspect she was hiding anything. She reached into the compartment, retrieved her federal ID card along with her badge, and carefully handed them to Martin. "Here's my identification," she said, her voice calm yet firm. "I'm Agent Annika Thompson from the National Security Agency. I'm on official business." Martin took the credentials, his gaze fixed on Annika the entire time. He flipped the ID card over, scanning its details. However, the suspicion in his eyes did not waver. Instead, his attention shifted to something inside the car. On the passenger seat lay a sleek black tablet, its design noticeably more sophisticated than an ordinary device. "What's this?" Martin asked sharply, pointing at the device. Annika turned slightly, glancing at the tablet. She immediately recognized it as the encryption device she was carrying for her mission. "That's an encryption device," she explained calmly. It's issued by the NSA. I'm authorized to carry it for work purposes." But Martin was far from satisfied with her explanation. His expression darkened with even deeper suspicion. To him, the tablet wasn't just a piece of work equipment, it was a clue. He turned back to Annika, his tone harsher. "An encryption device? Issued by the government? That sounds convenient," he said, his lips curling into a mocking smirk. "What are you hiding on that? Stolen data, perhaps?" Lucas, standing behind Martin, could no longer hide his discomfort. He didn't understand why Martin was pushing this so far based on such tenuous suspicions. But his years of working under Martin kept him silent. "Officer," Annika replied, her eyes steady on Martin, her voice calm but firm. "That device is a property of the NSA. It contains no illegal data. If you'd like, I can contact my superiors to clarify." "Your superiors?" Martin retorted, his voice dripping with disdain as he stepped closer to her, narrowing the space between them. "Do you think just claiming to be an agent is enough to get you out of this? Around here, we're not so easily fooled." Annika remained composed. "I'm not trying to fool anyone," she said, "but I ask that you follow proper procedures. You're overstepping your authority." Martin's irritation grew. Annika's firmness and confidence felt like a challenge to him. He'd encountered plenty of people trying to talk their way out of trouble, and in his mind, she was no different. "Step out of the car now," Martin commanded, his voice sharp, "and keep your hands where I can see them." Lucas, sensing the escalating tension, finally spoke up. "Martin, maybe we should call for backup or verify her information more thoroughly," he said, trying to keep his tone calm. "No need," Martin snapped without even glancing back at Lucas. "I know what I'm doing." Annika exhaled softly, realizing that reasoning with Martin was futile. She unbuckled her seatbelt slowly and then stepped out of the car as instructed. Her eyes stayed locked on Martin, her posture defensive but not aggressive. Martin glanced back at the vehicle, his focus returning to the tablet. He picked it up with 2 fingers, holding it as if it were evidence of a serious crime. "This looks more like a hacker's tool than a government-issued device," he said smugly. "I think we need to investigate further." Lucas's unease deepened. He looked at Annika. Her calm demeanor didn't match that of any criminal he had ever encountered. But Martin's authority and determination kept him from intervening further. Gripping the tablet tightly, Martin's cold gaze bore into Annika. "You have a lot of questions to answer," he said, a faint, chilling smile on his lips. "And I'm going to find out exactly what you're hiding." The situation had spiraled out of control, and Annika knew that this injustice wasn't going to end anytime soon. Martin tightened his grip on the tablet, his cold gaze never leaving Annika. "You think you're clever, don't you?" he sneered, his smile only adding to the tense atmosphere. "But we've seen plenty like you before, people who think they can outsmart the law." Annika stood tall, her unwavering eyes locked on his. "I've been clear," she said, her tone calm but firm. "This device is government property, and I am on a federal mission. You have no authority to confiscate or search my vehicle without a proper warrant." Her words only served to irritate Martin further. He was used to exercising his authority unchecked, and Annika's confidence felt like a direct challenge. "A warrant?" he mocked, stepping closer. "I don't need a warrant when I see something suspicious. And you, ma'am, are very suspicious." Lucas, standing behind Martin, watched the scene unfold. His unease grew with every word Martin spoke. While he didn't agree with the direction this was going, he was too accustomed to letting Martin take the lead, and his silence only emboldened Martin further. "Out of the car," Martin commanded, his voice sharp with authority. When Annika hesitated for a moment, he raised his voice, his hand moving to his holster. "I won't say it again." Realizing the situation was spiraling out of control, Annika had no choice but to comply. She slowly raised her hands, keeping them in plain view, and stepped out of the car. Despite the indignity of the moment, she maintained a calm and composed demeanor, knowing that any reaction could be misconstrued as provocation. Martin thoroughly searched her car, leaving no corner unchecked. He confiscated the tablet and rifled through her personal belongings, showing no hesitation as he upended the contents of the glove compartment. Lucas stood nearby, his expression uneasy, but he said nothing. "I know your type," Martin declared, throwing a cold glance in Annika's direction as he finished the search. "People who use a legitimate front to cover up illegal activities. You think flashing this badge will get you out of here?" He held up her federal ID, his voice dripping with sarcasm. Annika took a deep breath, striving to remain calm. "You are overstepping your authority," she said firmly, "and I will be reporting this to your superiors." Her words only fueled Martin's anger. He pulled out a pair of handcuffs, his expression smug. "You can report whoever you want, but first, you're coming to the station with me." Without offering further justification, he moved forward and cuffed her hands behind her back. Annika felt the cold metal tighten around her wrists. This wasn't her first encounter with a tense situation, but the blatant injustice and abuse of power she was experiencing stirred a storm of emotions within her. Lucas stepped closer, his voice tinged with concern. "Martin, are you sure about this? Maybe we should wait for a warrant or at least verify her information first." Martin turned to Lucas with a chilling glare. "You think I don't know what I'm doing. If you want to sit back and watch, go ahead. But don't interfere." Lucas fell silent, his eyes fixed on Annika as she was led away. A deep sense of unease gnawed at him, the feeling that this was wrong, that Martin was taking things too far. Yet his habitual deference to Martin's authority kept him from speaking up. At the police station, Annika was taken to a small interrogation room. Martin seemed intent on humiliating her, peppering her with sarcastic questions and baseless accusations. "A hacker? An undercover agent? Maybe you're running some kind of operation," he sneered, his smirk revealing his sense of superiority. Annika met his gaze steadily, showing no sign of weakness. "You can say whatever you want, but the truth will come out soon enough," she replied, her tone calm yet resolute. As Martin continued his abuse of power, Lucas stood outside, his hands clenched into fists. He knew he needed to do something, but the fear of consequences held him back. What happened next would thrust both him and Annika into an irreversible situation. In the cold, sterile interrogation room, Martin placed Annika's tablet on the table, his gaze filled with suspicion. "You say you work for the NSA, but there's no way to prove it. I've seen plenty of people impersonate someone like you." Annika responded calmly. "I've provided my credentials. You have no legitimate reason to hold me here." Martin chuckled coldly. "That badge won't protect you. I'll uncover the truth." He wasn't just speaking to Annika, he was reassuring himself. In his mind, memories of a case from 5 years ago resurfaced. A notorious hacker had outsmarted him, not only escaping, but also making him a laughingstock within the police force. Colleagues had mocked him. Superiors had demoted him for incompetence. That failure had become his obsession, a wound to his pride that never healed. Since then, Martin had sworn never to let anyone slip through his grasp, real or imagined. Lucas, standing outside the interrogation room, watched through the one-way glass. He could see the expressions of both Martin and Annika. Her calm demeanor stood in stark contrast to Martin's tense, self-satisfied posture. Lucas's confusion deepened. This wasn't the first time he'd seen Martin push too far, but this time things had gone completely off the rails. In a separate, dimly lit room, Lieutenant Harris sat across from Martin, the shadows playing across his contemplative face. "Do you think this is just about protecting your pride, Martin?" Harris asked, his voice low. "We've spent years building this network. It's not about you or your ego. It's about maintaining control. Without us, everything falls apart." Martin frowned, his hands gripping the edge of the table. "But this is my career. If she exposes me, the entire network could be revealed." Harris smirked, his gaze icy. "That's precisely why we can't let it happen. You know why this organization exists. Those people up there," he gestured toward the window, indicating the higher-ups, "don't care about you or me. We're just cogs in a much larger machine. But if we keep the machine running smoothly, everything stays under control. All we need to do is ensure people like her are silenced." A shiver ran down Martin's spine. Harris wasn't just an officer. He was part of something much bigger, something Martin had only scratched the surface of. "So, what's the plan?" Martin asked, his voice betraying uncertainty. "We'll do whatever is necessary," Harris replied, his gaze sharp as a blade. "Data, evidence, the media network, we control everything. If she wants to challenge us, she'll have to face the entire system." Meanwhile, outside the room, Lucas pulled out his phone and opened the recording app. He didn't know exactly why he was doing it, but he felt compelled to document what was happening. Every word Martin uttered, every tone of mockery, every baseless accusation was being saved. Lucas understood the risk. If Martin found out, it could cost him everything. But for the first time, Lucas realized that staying silent was no longer an option. In the room, Martin leaned toward Annika, his eyes cold and piercing. "I've sent this device to our tech team," he said smugly. "They'll uncover everything you're hiding, and when they do, you won't be able to escape." Annika raised an eyebrow, her tone unwavering. "You're exceeding your authority, Officer Green. That's an NSA-issued encryption device. You have no right to access it, and your actions will be deemed unlawful." Martin sneered. "Unlawful? You sound like a lawyer. But in this room, I make the law, and I have a feeling you're not just lying, you're hiding something big." Lucas took a step back, guilt and fear churning inside him. He knew Martin was in the wrong, that his actions weren't just overstepping authority but risking their careers and reputations. Yet, he still lacked the courage to walk into the room and stop his partner. As Lucas continued recording, Martin stood up, leaning over the table, his face close to Annika's. "This isn't a game, Agent," he said in a low, threatening voice. "I'll find out the truth, no matter the cost." Annika met his gaze unflinchingly. "The truth is always clear, Officer Green. The question is whether you're ready to face it." Her words cut deep into Martin's pride like a dagger. He straightened, his face flushed with anger, and stormed out of the room. As he passed Lucas, he didn't notice the concern and guilt in his colleague's eyes. Inside, Annika remained seated, composed, and resolute. She knew she was dealing with a man obsessed with authority, haunted by past failures and desperate for validation. But she also believed that somewhere, people like Lucas existed, those who could stand up for what was right. The only question was whether he dared to do so. As time passed, with no word from Annika, worry began to spread within the National Security Agency office. Annika was known for her punctuality and discipline, especially during critical missions. When a colleague attempted to contact her but failed, The matter was quickly escalated to higher authorities. Ethan Coleman, a seasoned senior agent, was tasked with investigating the situation. Ethan had worked closely with Annika on numerous high-stakes cases and was well acquainted with her personality and ability to handle situations. This sudden silence was something he couldn't ignore. When Ethan received information that Annika was being held at a local police station, he immediately set out, carrying all necessary documents to verify her identity. A quiet fury burned within him, a mixture of protectiveness for his colleague and indignation at the potential abuse of authority by the police. As Ethan walked into the police station, the atmosphere shifted palpably. His immaculate suit, commanding presence, and piercing gaze caught the attention of the officers. Ethan demanded to see the officer in charge of the case and was promptly led to Martin's office. Martin, who was reviewing Annika's detention records at the time, looked up as Ethan entered. His eyes betrayed a guarded wariness, though his tone remained as confident as ever. "I'm Officer Martin Green. What can I do for you, sir?" he asked, emphasizing the word sir with a touch of sarcasm. Ethan wasted no time. He placed a folder on the desk in front of Martin. "I'm Agent Ethan Coleman from the NSA. The person you're holding, Annika Thompson, is a federal agent on official duty. These documents verify her credentials. I'm here to demand her immediate release." Martin glanced at the folder but didn't touch it. Instead, he leaned back in his chair, his sharp eyes scrutinizing Ethan. "With all due respect," Martin began, his tone deliberately measured, "we're investigating a serious matter. The vehicle she was driving isn't registered to her, and she was carrying a device we suspect might be linked to illegal activities." Ethan narrowed his eyes, working hard to suppress the anger building inside him. "The device you're referring to is government property," he said firmly. "It was lawfully issued to Annika for her mission. Detaining her is not only a mistake, it's a violation of the law." Martin raised an eyebrow, a flicker of defiance in his expression. "We haven't been able to verify that yet. Until the device is fully examined, she will remain in custody as part of the investigation." Lucas, standing outside the office, listened intently through the slightly ajar door. He could feel the tension escalating between the two men. Ethan exuded an aura of authority and precision, while Martin clung desperately to his position of control. Inside Lucas, a battle raged between loyalty to Martin, his longtime partner, and the growing realization that Ethan was right. Annika was no criminal, and Martin's actions were unjustified. The conversation grew more heated as Ethan straightened, his gaze cutting through Martin like a blade. "Let me make this clear one last time," he said in a low, steely voice. "Release Annika immediately, or I'll ensure that the Department of Justice and Internal Affairs receive a full report on how you've mishandled this case." Martin smirked, but the confidence in his eyes began to crack. He knew Ethan wasn't someone who could be intimidated or swayed. Yet his pride and his obsession with being right prevented him from backing down. "We're just doing our job," he said, his voice quieter. "If she's truly innocent, she has nothing to worry about." As Ethan left Martin's office to meet Annika directly, he passed Lucas standing quietly in the hallway. Lucas avoided Ethan's piercing gaze, lowering his head as though trying to disappear. Ethan said nothing, but the sharpness in his look was enough to leave Lucas feeling stifled. Lucas turned back toward Martin's office door. He knew Martin was wrong, knew that Annika didn't deserve such treatment. But did he have the courage to speak up, or would he allow this injustice to continue? His mind was a tangle of opposing thoughts, each pulling him in a different direction. Inside the holding cell, Annika looked up as the door opened. Ethan entered, his expression resolute but tinged with concern. "We're getting you out," he said, his voice calm yet firm. "But this isn't over." Annika nodded, feeling the strong support of her veteran colleague. Deep down, she knew that resolving this situation would require more than one person's intervention. The real battle lay ahead. The tension was palpable as Ethan Coleman returned to Martin's office, carrying the documents necessary to prove Annika's identity and mission. He placed them on the desk with a decisive thud, the sound resonating like a warning. "This is proof that she is an NSA agent on an official federal mission," Ethan stated, his tone unwavering. "Any further detention will constitute a violation of federal law." Martin picked up the folder, his eyes scanning the pages. His expression remained neutral, but the confidence he had displayed earlier had visibly diminished. However, his pride and obsession with being right made him reluctant to abandon his stance. "These documents may verify her credentials as an agent," Martin said, attempting to maintain control over the situation, "but they don't explain why she was carrying an unregistered encryption device. We have reasonable grounds for suspicion." Ethan stepped forward, his piercing gaze drilling into Martin. "Your suspicion isn't based on evidence. It's rooted in prejudice. If you continue holding her here, I won't just escalate this to the Department of Justice. I'll make sure it's all over the media. Do you want to test me?" Ethan's words hit Martin like a blow to his pride. He sat silently for a moment, clearly weighing his options. Finally, he exhaled heavily and gave a reluctant nod. "Fine. She can go." Martin stood beside Lucas as Annika was led out of the holding cell. She maintained her composure, her expression devoid of fear or humiliation. Martin looked directly at her, and though it was clear he didn't want to, he forced himself to say, "I apologize for the inconvenience." The apology sounded hollow and insincere, but Annika didn't respond. She simply nodded, her gaze brushing over Martin as if to remind him that this wasn't over. As Annika left the station with Ethan, Martin remained in his office, seething. To him, this wasn't just a loss, it was a humiliation, a direct blow to his already fragile reputation. But rather than reflecting on his mistakes, Martin began plodding away to regain control of the narrative. He sat at his desk, staring at the confiscated tablet. "If there's anything suspicious on this device, I'll find it," he thought with a chilling grin. "And if there isn't, I'll create it." In Martin's mind, this wasn't about upholding the law, it was about protecting his ego. Mistakes weren't the issue. It was about ensuring no one else saw those mistakes. Meanwhile, Annika sat silently in Ethan's car as they drove away from the police station. She turned to look back at the building, her eyes sharp with caution. "They're not going to stop here," she said quietly. Ethan glanced at her in the rearview mirror. "I don't think so either. Martin doesn't strike me as someone who accepts being wrong." Annika nodded. "He's too obsessed. The way he looked at me, the way he held onto that encryption device. He doesn't just want to detain me. He wants to prove he's right, no matter what." Ethan remained silent for a moment, then said, "Are you certain there's nothing on that device that could give him an excuse to act?" "Absolutely," Annika replied firmly. "But that won't stop him from creating a new story." Ethan's brow furrowed, his grip tightening on the steering wheel. "In that case, we need to prepare. This isn't just about you anymore, Annika. If he fabricates anything, it could damage the NSA and compromise our mission." Annika turned to look out the window, her mind racing. She knew the real fight had just begun, and this time it wasn't only about protecting herself. It was about confronting a system determined to shield its wrongdoing, no matter the cost. On his way home, Lucas Brown couldn't shake the torment of what he had witnessed. Martin's excessive confidence and obsession had driven him too far. Lucas understood that staying silent meant complicity in wrongdoing. Yet fear gripped him. Fear of losing his job, fear of betraying his colleague, and fear of becoming the next target. That night, in his small apartment, Lucas replayed the secret recording he had made of the conversation between Martin and Lieutenant Harris. The words chilled him to his core. "Martin, we need to prove she's not clean. She can't just walk out of here like this, making me look like the one in the wrong. That tablet, I'm sure we can find something on it. Lieutenant Harris, are you certain? She's an NSA agent. If this gets out, we won't just lose our jobs, we could face prosecution. Martin, no one will know. I'll make sure the data on the device looks authentic. We just need a convincing story, that she was using it for unauthorized access. People like her don't escape our net without leaving a trace." Harris sighs. "Fine, but be careful. If there's any sign of exposure, we'll sever all ties." Lucas paused the recording, his chest tightening. This wasn't just a case of overstepping authority. It was a conspiracy to fabricate evidence and destroy an innocent person. Such an act not only jeopardized Annika's career, but also threatened the integrity of the entire police department. Lucas knew he couldn't stay silent any longer. He decided to reach out to Annika, even if it meant putting himself in danger. Taking his phone, he dialed the number he had discreetly memorized from her file. The line rang, and then Annika's cautious but calm voice answered. "Who is this?" "Agent Thompson, this is Lucas Brown," he began, his voice trembling slightly. "I work with Martin Green. I need to talk to you." Annika straightened at the mention of Lucas. While she knew he hadn't directly caused her ordeal, he was part of the system that had detained her. Still, the unease in his voice piqued her interest. "What do you want?" she asked, her tone steady. "I don't agree with what Martin did," Lucas said quickly. "He's planning to fabricate evidence to frame you. I have proof, a recording. I think you need to hear it." Half an hour later, using a secure encrypted call Annika had set up, Lucas sent her the recording. As she listened to Martin and Harris's conversation, her eyes grew cold, a sharp determination replacing her earlier frustration. This was the proof she needed to expose their scheme. "Do you know what you're doing?" Annika asked Lucas. "If you make this public, they'll come after you." "I know," Lucas replied, his voice steady with resolve. "But I can't stay silent anymore. What they're doing is wrong, and I don't want to be part of it." Annika nodded, even though Lucas couldn't see her. "All right. I'll forward this recording to my superiors. We'll use it to fight back, but you need to be careful. They won't sit idle if they find out you're the whistleblower." "I understand," Lucas said, hesitating slightly. "I just want you to know, I'm sorry for not stepping in when this started." "You've done the right thing now," Annika replied, "and that matters more than any apology." After the call, Annika shared the recording with Ethan, who immediately recognized its significance. "This is all we need," he said, his eyes alight with determination. "But we have to act fast. If they find out we have this evidence, they'll try to erase everything." Annika nodded. "We won't give them the chance. We'll expose the truth, and this time they'll have nowhere to hide." Though they now had critical evidence, Annika knew the road ahead would be fraught with danger. But the fear that had once loomed over her was gone, replaced by a steadfast determination to uphold the truth and bring those who abuse their power to justice. Shortly after receiving Lucas's recording, Annika and Ethan quickly convened an emergency meeting with the NSA's legal and tech teams. The tension in the room was palpable. Everyone understood the critical importance of the recording in exposing Martin and his accomplices. Ethan stood at the head of the table, his sharp gaze sweeping across the room as his clear, commanding voice echoed. "This is the evidence we need," he said, placing a USB drive containing the recording onto the table. "If we release this recording, Martin Green and his associates won't escape accountability. But we must ensure the information is secure before acting. They could be planning their next move." Annika sat opposite him, her eyes fixed on the computer screen in front of her. She had seen enough intricate schemes to know this wasn't the end game. "We need to act fast," she said. "If Martin or his superiors realize we have this recording, they won't hesitate to use any means to stop us." The NSA team drafted a meticulous plan to release the recording securely while simultaneously submitting it to federal oversight agencies and the Department of Justice. Everything proceeded smoothly during the initial hours until something unexpected happened. At midnight, the NSA's internal network came under attack. The cybersecurity team scrambled to respond, but the breach was swift and decisive. Critical files, including the recording, were copied and partially altered before being leaked online. Worse still, fabricated evidence allegedly sourced from Annika's encryption device surfaced on the internet before they could react. The next morning, headlines blared across media outlets, spreading a damning narrative. NSA agent suspected of espionage. Encryption device contains illicit data. Police uncover internal spy plot. Ethan projected the headlines onto a large screen in the conference room. The harsh accusations were displayed in glaring detail. Everyone in the room turned their shocked gazes to Annika, but she remained composed, her sharp eyes fixed on the screen. "This isn't Martin," she said, her voice thoughtful but firm. "He can't orchestrate something like this. There's a larger force at work." Ethan nodded in agreement. "I think the same. The way they breached our system, altered the data, and leaked it. It's beyond the skill set of a local officer." NSA's cybersecurity team traced the stolen data through multiple servers, eventually linking it to a shadowy network within the police force. Ethan realized that Martin was merely a pawn, with Lieutenant Harris playing a larger role in the conspiracy. "We need to act immediately," Annika said, her eyes gleaming with determination. "They'll keep manipulating the narrative unless we expose them." The team decided to launch a coordinated counterattack. Annika and Ethan reached out to trusted journalists, sharing the original recording and proof that the newly leaked data was falsified. Meanwhile, the NSA's legal team prepared to file formal charges with the Department of Justice, accusing Martin, Harris, and their shadow organization of evidence tampering and cyber attacks. "We're not just defending Annika," Ethan declared with resolve. "We're going to dismantle this entire corrupt system." As the day wound down, Annika prepared to leave the NSA office. Ethan approached her, holding a large envelope, his expression serious. "Annika, I think you should see this," he said, handing her the documents. Inside were photos, maps, and classified reports, all linked to a name Annika didn't expect. A powerful figure in the economic sector with apparent ties to the shadow organization. "He hasn't been caught," Ethan said gravely. "It seems he anticipated this and is already rebuilding elsewhere." Annika studied the documents, her resolve hardening. "We can't let him continue," she said firmly. "Wherever he is, we'll find him." Ethan nodded, though his concern was evident. "This won't be like last time. He's not just smarter, he's more dangerous." Annika turned to look out the window, the city lights reflecting in her eyes. "I'm ready. This is just the beginning." When she looked back at Ethan, a faint smile played on her lips. but she knew the battle ahead would be far more challenging. Thanks to the coordinated efforts of Anika, Ethan, and the NSA legal team, Lucas's recording was made public, exposing Martin and his co-conspirators' scheme to falsify evidence. The revelation sparked a public outcry with demands for transparency and justice. However, not all media outlets sided with Anika. Some, backed by the Shadow Organization, released smear campaigns, dividing public opinion. Anika remained resolute. "This is how they react when cornered," she told Ethan. "They're trying to discredit me to bury the truth." Under mounting public pressure and clear evidence, Martin Green was officially suspended pending investigation. His tense face appeared on news screens, but his defiance was still visible in his eyes. Inside the police department, the scandal rippled beyond Martin, shaking the institution to its core. Lieutenant Harris, Martin's accomplice, denied all involvement, attempting to shift the blame entirely onto his subordinate. However, Lucas's recording and additional findings from the NSA implicated Harris in the conspiracy, leading to his inclusion in the investigation. Lucas, who had courageously stepped forward as a whistleblower, began to feel the mounting pressure. One evening, returning home, he found his car vandalized and a note stuck to his door reading, "Stay quiet, or you'll lose more." Shaken, Lucas's fear intensified when he received a call from an unknown number. "We know you're behind the recording," a cold voice said. "If you don't retract your testimony, you'll regret it." Lucas trembled, consumed by anxiety. He understood this was no idle threat. At that moment, he considered withdrawing his testimony, fearing for his safety and his family's well-being. Sitting alone in his small apartment, fear and conscience wrestled within Lucas. "If I don't speak the truth, who will?" he asked himself before picking up his phone to call Anika. Lucas met Anika at a secure location, where she urged him to stand firm. "If you retract your testimony, they win and continue their abuse of power," she said. Lucas hesitated, his concerns for his family evident. But under Anika's steadfast gaze, he felt a surge of support. After a moment of silence, he nodded. "All right. I won't let them intimidate me anymore." By choosing to hand over the recording to Anika, Lucas not only exposed the wrongful actions of Martin and Harris, but also unveiled a larger truth. Recovered data from Anika's encryption device revealed connections between the Shadow Organization and high-ranking political officials. One financial document stunned the team: a web of multi-million-dollar transactions funneled through shell companies linking major corporations to undisclosed funds. These funds were used to bankroll political campaigns in exchange for favorable laws and policies. "This isn't just a case of abuse of power," Anika said, her sharp eyes scanning the files on the screen. "This is a force operating behind the scenes, shaping the very system we live in. They're not just after wealth. They want control." Ethan nodded in agreement. "That explains why they'll go to any lengths to bury the truth. If we continue, we're not just taking on Martin or Harris. We're facing a network that can destroy anyone in their way." Despite Lucas's resolve to testify, Anika and Ethan knew the organization behind Martin wouldn't stop. They were up against more than personal threats. They also faced relentless efforts to manipulate the narrative in the media. "We can't just wait for their next move," Anika said during a meeting with Ethan and the legal team. "We need to release more evidence and collaborate with third parties to ensure the truth isn't buried." Ethan nodded, his determination evident. "We'll do whatever it takes. But be careful, Anika. This organization is bigger than we imagined, and I don't think Martin is just a pawn. He may be holding information we haven't uncovered yet." Anika agreed, her resolve unshaken. If that's true, we have all the more reason to expose everything, and this time I won't let anyone cover up the truth. Working tirelessly alongside the NSA's tech team, Annika and Ethan pushed to recover the original data from the encryption device. The dim light of the server room reflected on their faces as screens flickered with streams of code. Ethan stood behind the technicians, his sharp eyes following each line of progress, while Annika sat nearby, holding a file of collected evidence. "We're close to restoring the original data," the lead technician announced, his voice tense but determined. "But we have to be careful. If the falsified data has been embedded, isolating it without damaging the originals is extremely delicate." Annika nodded, her expression resolute. "Do whatever it takes. We're not just proving my innocence, we're dismantling this entire conspiracy." Meanwhile, Martin received word that the NSA was nearing the recovery of the authentic data. His unease turned into panic. He hastily convened a secret meeting with high-ranking members of the Shadow Organization. "We can't let them release that data," Martin said, his voice strained. "If it comes to light, we're finished. Not just our careers, but we'll face criminal charges." A cold-faced man across from him nodded. "We need to act immediately. Lucas is the biggest threat. If he keeps testifying, everything will collapse." Martin wiped the sweat from his brow. "I'll handle my part, but we need to ensure Lucas is no longer a problem." Working tirelessly alongside the NSA's tech team, Annika and Ethan pushed to recover the original data from the encryption device. The dim light of the server room reflected on their faces as screens flickered with streams of code. Ethan stood behind. The technicians, his sharp eyes following each line of progress, while Annika sat nearby, holding a file of collected evidence. "We're close to restoring the original data," the lead technician announced, his voice tense but determined. "But we have to be careful. If the falsified data has been embedded, isolating it without damaging the originals is extremely delicate." Annika nodded, her expression resolute. "Do whatever it takes. We're not just proving my innocence, we're dismantling this entire conspiracy." Meanwhile, Martin received word that the NSA was nearing the recovery of the authentic data. His unease turned into panic. He hastily convened a secret meeting with high-ranking members of the Shadow Organization. "We can't let them release that data," Martin said, his voice strained. "If it comes to light, we're finished. Not just our careers, but we'll face criminal charges." A cold-faced man across from him nodded. "We need to act immediately. Lucas is the biggest threat. If he keeps testifying, everything will collapse." Martin wiped the sweat from his brow. "I'll handle my part. But we need to ensure Lucas is no longer a problem." Lucas, now under NSA protection, was moved to a secure location. However, the Shadow Organization didn't relent. During transit, Lucas received an anonymous call. A chilling voice echoed through the phone. "Do you think you'll be safe forever, Lucas? We know where you are." Peering out the window of the escort vehicle into the shadowy night, Lucas's stomach tightened. Cars loomed in the darkness like ghosts, and he realized the truth he held wasn't just a personal burden. It was a threat to his very life. Upon learning of the anonymous call, Annika immediately assembled a tactical team to protect Lucas and trace the attackers. "They won't stop until we force them to," she said, her eyes blazing with determination. On Lucas's escort route, a convoy of unmarked cars launched an ambush, forcing the NSA convoy to halt. The attackers moved swiftly, surrounding the vehicle. The NSA agents sprang into action, fending off the assault with precision. With Annika's reinforcements arriving in time, Lucas was extracted safely. Hearing the distress call, Annika and Ethan raced to the scene. Ethan gripped the steering wheel tightly as they sped down the rural road, while Annika spoke into the radio, her voice cold but urgent. "Lucas is in danger. We need to get there before it's too late." Approaching the ambush site, they saw Lucas's escort vehicle forced off the road. Armed attackers in black advanced on the car. Ethan accelerated, slamming into one of the attackers' vehicles and sending it careening into a fence. Annika leaped from the car, drawing her weapon without hesitation. "Stand down!" she shouted, her voice ringing with authority. Startled but unyielding, the attackers opened fire, shattering the night silence. As Annika and Ethan fought to protect Lucas, Martin, aware that his time was running out, attempted to flee. But Ethan had anticipated this. A team of NSA agents intercepted Martin at an abandoned warehouse where he sought refuge. Cornered, Martin raised his gun, his eyes flickering between fear and feigned composure. "I only did what was necessary," he stammered. "She's not innocent. I was protecting the law." Sweat dripped down his face as doubt gnawed at him. Am I protecting the law, or just my ego? The thought choked him, but he brushed it aside, clinging to the delusion that his actions were justified. Annika stepped into the warehouse, her gaze cutting through the dim light. "You're not protecting the law. You're protecting yourself," she said sharply. Martin started to protest but was swiftly subdued by NSA agents. Ethan snapped handcuffs onto Martin's wrists, his voice cold and final. "Your game is over." As Martin faced interrogation, a horrifying truth began to surface. He recalled Harris's words. "Just stick to the plan. We'll handle the rest." The Shadow Organization wasn't just a small faction, but a sprawling network infiltrating society's key sectors. For over a decade, they had manipulated the justice system to shield the wealthy and powerful from prosecution. Through bribes and clandestine operations, they coerced politicians, controlled economic projects, and even dictated media narratives to steer public opinion. Martin remembered glancing through secret files that revealed how major corruption cases were squashed before they even reached court. Corporations accused of tax evasion or labor abuses avoided accountability by contributing large sums to the organization's slush fund. The organization's motives extended beyond preserving power. They sought to maintain a system they could exploit for economic gain. At its core, they aimed to ensure no government agency or individual could challenge their dominion. One of Harris's remarks replayed in Martin's mind, "We're not just enforcers of order. We create order. Without us, the world would fall into chaos." Now, faced with the undeniable truth, Martin realized that this order was nothing more than a facade for legal manipulation benefiting a select few. As the evidence against him piled up, Martin came to a bitter realization. He had never been a crucial player. Annika's team uncovered files proving the vast extent of the Shadow Network. It included high-ranking police officials, private business executives, and politicians, all working towards the same goal: systemic exploitation for personal gain. "They never cared about me," Martin muttered, his voice breaking. "I was just a pawn, a scapegoat." Ethan stood nearby, watching as Martin's facade crumbled. "This is the final blow," Ethan said with satisfaction, "not just to Martin, but to the entire organization." Annika gazed at the screen displaying the damning evidence, a mixture of relief and resolve in her eyes. "This isn't just a victory for today. We're cleaning out the entire system." Though the major battle was over, Annika knew the fight against corruption and abuse of power was far from finished. With Ethan, Lucas, and their team by her side, she felt ready for whatever challenges lay ahead. The clinking of handcuffs echoed as Martin was led away. his gaze hollow yet stubbornly defiant. Surrounding him were other members of the Shadow Organization, each being escorted out from the secret bases they had used to operate their illicit network. The media exploded with breaking news exposing how this organization had manipulated the police force and undermined public trust for years. With the original data restored and all falsified evidence debunked, Annika was officially exonerated. Her image in the media shifted from one of suspicion and false accusations to one of admiration. She became a symbol of resilience and justice, a woman who not only defended herself but also fought against an entire corrupt system. In the shadowy office of a high-rise building, a man silently watched Annika's image on a massive screen. Beside him was a map cluttered with red markings connected by thin strings leading to the names of organizations and powerful figures. Pressing a button on his desk, his deep, chilling voice echoed through the intercom. "We have a problem. Annika Thompson hasn't just survived, she's surpassed expectations. Initiate contingency Plan B and verify contact points in Washington and New York." A voice responded respectfully from the speaker. "Understood, sir. Should we continue surveillance?" The man smirked, pointing at a pinned photo of Annika on the map. "Not just surveillance. Make sure she doesn't get another chance to step into our territory. This game has just begun." As the screen went dark, the room descended into an ominous silence, foreshadowing what lay ahead. At a press conference, Annika spoke with unwavering conviction. "This story isn't just about me. It's a reminder that no one is above the law. We need a transparent system that is accountable to the people." After the conference, Annika met with Lucas. "Thank you," she said sincerely. "Without you, the truth wouldn't have come to light." Lucas nodded. "I'm ready to stand by your side for the next steps." As time passed, Annika became deeply involved in advocating for judicial and police reform. She appeared at conferences, participated in discussions with lawmakers, and collaborated with NGOs to drive change. Lucas often accompanied her, bringing his perspective as an insider to help them better understand the system's flaws. "We can't just change a few individuals," Annika said during a reform meeting. "We need to overhaul how the system operates, from training and oversight to how it holds itself accountable to the public." One evening, after a long day of work, Annika stood in front of NSA headquarters. The towering building loomed above her, a symbol of power and responsibility. She looked up, her gaze filled with determination. The memories of what she had endured, unjust accusations, false evidence, and systemic abuse of power, remained vivid. Yet, instead of deterring her, they fueled her resolve. Ethan approached from behind, placing a reassuring hand on her shoulder. "You've accomplished so much," he said, "but your journey isn't over yet." Annika looked at the imposing structure before her, her determination unwavering. "I won't stop. What I've started, I'll see through to the end. Whatever lies ahead, I'm ready for it." She walked forward, her small but resolute figure standing strong against the bustling backdrop of the city. Behind her,